The crystal chandelier shimmered above, scattering glints of light like falling stars across the marble floors of Maison Lumière. Ethan Gray wiped table 12 for the third time, his movements meticulous, almost meditative. To the casual diner, he was just another busboy, quiet, invisible, his white uniform pristine but unremarkable. His hands, roughened by years of labor, moved with a grace that betrayed deeper knowledge. His sneakers, worn at the soles, whispered against the floor with each step. But Ethan wasn't what he seemed. Beneath the humble posture and calloused palms hid a truth that, if revealed, would ripple through the elegant room like a dropped wine glass. He owned everything. The polished brass fixtures, the custom crystal stemware, even the scent of lavender and rosemary that hung faintly in the air. Maison Lumière was his vision, brought to life after years of sleepless nights and second mortgages. For 2 weeks he'd immersed himself in this role, walking silently among guests and servers alike, absorbing every detail as just another face in the crowd. Either table 6 needs water refills. Maria called across the dining room, her voice heavy with fatigue. She didn't know the man she was ordering around had signed her paycheck. "Hold on," he replied smoothly, grabbing the carafe from the service station. Its familiar weight grounded him. He'd hand-picked every piece of glassware when they opened 3 years ago. Walking through the aisles between tables, he didn't just observe, he scrutinized. Were glasses being refilled promptly? Did servers smile with sincerity or obligation? Did the rhythm from the kitchen align with the tempo he'd spent years refining? Michelin reviewer would walk through those doors in 2 weeks, and if this restaurant was going to earn a star, Ethan needed the truth, the raw, unfiltered truth. Not what people told him when they knew he was watching, but what they said when they thought he was no one. "Behind you." "Hot plates," came a familiar voice. Ethan stepped aside instinctively. Leia moved past him, balancing 3 steaming dishes on her arms with practiced ease. Her dark hair was tied back into the restaurant's standard ponytail, making her look even younger than her 21 years. In another timeline, she should have been deep into her studies in molecular gastronomy, experimenting in a high-tech culinary lab. But instead, she was here, covering for 2 servers who had quit without warning. Covering herself with a warm towel, what no one knew, what no one could know, was that Laia was Ethan's niece, his sister's daughter, and like him, she had inherited their family's obsession with food, the art, the science, the soul of it. "Thank you," an elderly woman at table 4 said softly as Laia placed a plate of coq au vin in front of her. "You're such a sweetheart." Leia's face lit up with an effortless warmth. "I hope you enjoy it, ma'am. Chef prepared it with a special cognac reduction tonight." Watching her, Ethan felt a complex blend of emotions stir inside him. Pride, guilt, love. She had put her dreams on pause for him, stepping in during the staffing crisis without hesitation. But to everyone else, she was just another temp server, and he, just another busboy. That was the price of truth, of learning whether this place stood on its own, not just on the legend of its founder. The room buzzed with the harmony of a successful Friday night. Subtle jazz curled around conversation, flames danced behind the open kitchen, wine glasses sang like crystal bells. It was everything Ethan had once dared to dream of, back when Maison Lumière was nothing more than sketches on a napkin and hope in a cheap notebook. Then the front doors opened, and the dream shifted. They walked in like they owned the place. The man, all arrogance and Armani, had silver hair that looked sculpted and eyes that scanned the room with casual dismissal. His suit likely cost more than a server's monthly paycheck. The woman beside him sparkled under the chandeliers, her diamonds catching the light like tiny fireworks. "Reservation for Carrington," the man announced to Sophie at the host stand, his voice sharp and loud enough for half the room to hear. "Brent Carrington, we're on your VIP list." Sophie tapped quickly through her tablet, a crease forming between her brows. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carrington, but I don't see a reservation under that name." "Perhaps you need to look harder," the woman interjected with icy condescension. "I'm Vanessa Carrington. We don't make reservations. We expect to be accommodated." From his station, Ethan's stomach tightened. He'd built this place on respect and integrity, but that didn't mean they bowed to entitlement. Every staff member had been trained to deliver excellence without ever compromising their dignity. "Let me check with our manager," Sophie said, her tone steady despite the building tension. "Don't bother," Brent scoffed. "Just seat us, your best table preferably. We've got important business tonight." Sophie's eyes scanned the packed room. There wasn't a single unoccupied table. Ethan could see her professionalism start to crack, a flicker of panic just beneath her polished exterior. "I can offer you seats at the bar," she offered, motioning gracefully. "You'll have a direct view of the kitchen. It's a lovely spot." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Do you have any idea who my husband is?" she hissed. "We don't sit at bars like college kids." The energy in the room shifted. Nearby diners paused mid-sentence, tension thickening the air like smoke. Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. He'd seen scenes like this before, and they always left a scar on the soul of the room. But with a Michelin review so close, the stakes had never been higher. "Of course," Sophie said quickly, trying to salvage the moment. "Let me see what I can—" "There," Brent interrupted, pointing toward table 8. A young couple sat there, laughing gently over shared appetizers. "Move them. We'll take that table." "I'm sorry, sir," Sophie said, her voice tight but composed. "I can't ask guests to leave their table." Vanessa's bracelets clinked sharply as she gestured. "Then what can you do? This is supposed to be a 5-star experience. So far you're failing, miserably." The couple at table 8 had gone silent, their joy dissolved in the air. All around, diners looked on, not out of curiosity, but discomfort. The kind that lingered in the atmosphere like a dropped note in a perfect melody. And Ethan stood still, heart pounding, mind racing, knowing he couldn't intervene without shattering the truth he'd worked so hard to uncover. Would have long could he stay silent. A quiet murmur began to ripple across the dining room, guests turning toward the disruption like flowers to light. But this wasn't admiration, it was the uneasy kind of attention, the kind that chipped away at ambiance like a crack in fine china. Ethan stood still, heart sinking, as the elegant world he had so painstakingly constructed began to fray at the edges. Sophie, her voice a mix of strained courtesy and quiet urgency, finally made a call. "Let me speak with our floor manager. Please, take a seat in our waiting area. I'll resolve this immediately." Reluctantly, the Carringtons moved toward the lounge. Ethan, still in character, watched every movement with silent intensity. Then, from the corner of his eye, he spotted Laya approaching the hostess stand, water pitcher in hand, her brow furrowed with concern. But beneath that concern was resolve. It was the same look she had when perfecting a soufflé for the 3rd time, refusing to let it fall. "Sophie," she said softly, "table 12 just left. I can reset it in 5 minutes." Sophie exhaled, tension spilling from her like steam from a boiling pot. "You're an angel, Laya." "Yes, please. Make it fast." As Leia moved swiftly across the floor with fresh linens, Ethan's gut twisted. There was something deeply unsettling in the way Brent Carrington's eyes followed her, like a hawk tracking movement. It wasn't admiration, it was ownership, calculation. Ethan had always believed that respect must flow in both directions, customer to staff, staff to guest. But in that moment, he sensed the Carringtons hadn't come for a meal, they'd come to dominate. And his niece had just walked into their crosshairs. Within minutes, Leia had transformed table 12 back to pristine condition. Snow-white linen stretched crisp, silverware perfectly aligned, a small vase of white peonies freshly arranged. Her efficiency wasn't just from training. It was muscle memory born of discipline and pride. But as Sophie led the Carringtons over, the unease in Ethan's chest swelled. Brent pulled out Vanessa's chair with a mockery of chivalry. "Finally," he said, loud enough for the room to hear, though I must say the delay in service was embarrassingly unprofessional. Laya approached with poise and her brightest service smile. "Good evening. I'm Laya, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Welcome to Maison Lumière." Vanessa barely looked up. "Is that uniform regulation? It looks rather wrinkled." Ethan's grip tightened on the water pitcher. Laya had changed just an hour ago. Her uniform was flawless, but she didn't flinch. "I apologize if it appears that way, ma'am," she replied, voice smooth as silk. "May I begin with our wine list or offer one of our signature cocktails?" Brent smirked. "Can you even pronounce the wines on your list? Some of these French names can be tricky." "For people like you?" The insult hung in the air. Laya's smile remained, but Ethan noticed her fingers tighten ever so slightly around the menu. "I'd be happy to guide you through the selection," she said, her tone steady. "Our sommelier has curated an award-winning list." "Oh, I'm sure she's memorized a few phrases," Vanessa cut in, her laugh cold and dismissive, like a trained parrot. "Very cute." At a neighboring table, a woman turned, her expression shifting from amusement to discomfort. Ethan saw it clearly now. The moment where elegance met cruelty, and cruelty tried to pass as superiority. "Perhaps I could suggest our wine-tasting flight," Leia continued, refusing to be thrown. "It features 3 guest favorites and comes with detailed tasting notes." Brent waved her off. "We don't need training wheels. Bring us the 2015 Chateau Margaux. Make sure it's properly decanted. I assume you know what that means." Ethan's heart sank. The 2015 Chateau Margaux, an $800 0-cent bottle, had been sold 2 nights ago. It was one of the rarest vintages in their collection. "I'll need to verify availability," Leia said calmly. "We may have the 2016, which is equally refined, or I could also recommend—" "We specifically asked for the 2015, Vanessa snapped. "Are you telling us this restaurant can't provide what we order?" The word low class left her lips like a slap. Ethan watched the ripple again, heads turning, murmurs rising. But this time the disapproval wasn't just for the server. It was inching toward the Carringtons. Laya kept her back straight, her eyes clear. "I'll speak with our wine steward right away," she said. "In the meantime, would you care to try our artisanal bread service?" Snap, snap, snap. Brent snapped his fingers at her. "Focus, dear. Wine first. Everything else can wait." Ethan's molars ground together so tightly he felt the tension in his temples. In all his years running Maison Lumière, he'd never once witnessed this level of arrogance cloaked in entitlement. His every instinct screamed to throw them out, but one move would blow his cover, and everything riding on it. "I understand completely," Laya replied, her voice slightly quieter. "I'll check on that wine immediately." She turned and walked toward the wine cellar, her posture still professional, but Ethan caught the subtle shift, the smallest sag in her shoulders. It was the kind of micro-expression only someone who truly knew her would recognize. She was holding herself together with threads. Vanessa's voice cut through again. "Did you see that? She slouched like a teenager. Where do they find these people?" Brent chuckled. "Probably some community college hospitality program. You can tell she's out of her league." At table 4, the same elderly woman who had earlier called Laya a sweetheart looked stricken. Her husband leaned in, whispered something, his expression like thunder on the horizon. Laya returned, composed. "Our sommelier confirms that the 2015 Chateau Margaux is unavailable this evening," she said. "However, we do have the 2016, which pairs beautifully with tonight's specials, or a 2014 Pichon Baron with similar complexity and finish." "So," Brent said, cutting her off, "you can't fulfill a simple wine order?" Laya kept her voice composed. "We offer over 200 selections. I'd be happy to guide you to a perfect alternative." Vanessa scoffed. 200, and none of them what we want. No wonder we dine elsewhere." Vanessa frowned. Ethan saw it, that flicker of red blooming across Laya's cheeks, but she didn't back down. "I apologize for any inconvenience," she said. "Would you like our sommelier to join you?" "What we need," Brent replied slowly, "is a server who knows what she's doing, not someone who looks like she just learned which fork to use." Ethan stepped back from the water station, jaw tight. He had wanted the truth, but now he was beginning to realize the truth sometimes demanded action. That was the moment. Ethan's foot slid forward, his fists clenched tight, every nerve in his body screaming to step in, to defend Leia, to end the performance of humility he'd worn like armor for 2 weeks. But then he saw her. Leia stood tall, her cheeks faintly flushed, eyes steady but her voice calm, composed, and unmistakably strong. "I understand this has been frustrating," she said softly, with a grace that silenced the air around her. "Let me start over. I'm Leia, and I want to make sure you have an absolutely wonderful evening. What can I do to make that happen?" In that breath, Ethan froze, not because of weakness, but awe. This was why she belonged in fine dining, not just for her culinary knowledge or her precision, but for her resilience, her presence, her dignity. She carried the soul of hospitality, not in technique, but in spirit. But Brent Carrington only smiled, a chilling curve of the mouth that held no warmth, just calculation. And Ethan suddenly realized with an icy certainty, this wasn't the end of a bad evening. It was the beginning of something much darker. Later that night, as the clock ticked toward midnight, Ethan unlocked the back door to Maison Lumière. The final guest had left 20 minutes ago, and the restaurant had exhaled its last breath of the day. His staff, tired but loyal, had quietly completed their closing duties. Leia had stayed until the very end, her performance as polished as ever. But Ethan had seen the redness in her eyes when she thought no one was looking. The Carringtons had ordered the cheapest wine on the list, clearly not for enjoyment, but as a subtle jab. Every request from them a rehearsed critique. The bread's warmth, the unbalanced lighting, the off-key jazz, each complaint louder than necessary, meant to draw attention, to humiliate, to poison the air. Ethan had dealt with difficult customers before, but this felt staged, precise, too deliberate. His phone buzzed. "Emergency meeting, back office, now, M." When Ethan entered the small, dim office behind the kitchen, Mason Langford was already waiting. At 45, Mason didn't look like a restaurateur, more like a West Coast tech mogul, dressed in jeans and a polo. But his face was tight with concern, his body language sharp. "We have a problem," Mason said, motioning Ethan to sit. "A serious one. If this is about tonight, it is. The Carringtons." Ethan's heart gave a slight jolt. "You know them?" "I know of them," Mason replied grimly. He turned his laptop toward Ethan. On the screen was Brent Carrington's professional bio. No sign of the smug arrogance from dinner. Only steely-eyed ambition and numbers. Founder of Carrington Holdings, specializing in acquisitions of high-end hospitality brands. 3 months ago, Mason continued, Carrington Holdings placed a $200 million 0-cents bid to acquire the Meridian Restaurant Group, 15 luxury restaurants. They lost to you, Ethan realized slowly. Mason gave a slight nod. "I've been moving into the hospitality sector. Meridian was my first major acquisition." Ethan blinked, the puzzle pieces clicking into place like a lock snapping shut. "They're targeting us." "Exactly," Mason said. He flipped to another tab, a spreadsheet and collage of screenshots, bad Yelp reviews, TikTok videos of staged meltdowns, Reddit threads trashing staff. 3 of Meridian's properties had already been attacked. Each time, the same formula. High-profile guests stirring chaos, employees provoked into emotional reactions, clips posted online, Reputations crushed in days. They're staging viral takedowns, Mason said. And tonight, it was our turn. Ethan leaned closer, scanning the evidence. The tactic wasn't random. It was warfare. Psychological. Public. Devastating. And Laya? Ethan asked quietly. They chose her, Mason confirmed. My PI found they researched your team. They wanted someone who would evoke public sympathy if humiliated. A cold rage began building in Ethan's chest. But it was a controlled fire, not a blaze. They're coming back, Mason added. Tomorrow night, with hidden cameras and influencers. They want a meltdown, something viral, something big. Ethan stood, pacing. Why are you just telling me this now? I got confirmation an hour ago. My PI followed them after dinner. They went to a hotel suite and met with 3 others, experts in viral marketing. Ethan stared at the floor, jaw tight. It wasn't just business anymore. They were threatening his family, his people, his dream. What's their endgame? He asked. Destroy your reputation, scare off Michelin, force your hand into bankruptcy. Then Carrington Holdings sweeps in, buys Maison Lumière for pennies, and adds it to their trophy shelf. Mason shut the laptop. It's not personal. It's business. But for Ethan, it was personal. They had made Laya cry. They had tried to twist a sanctuary of craftsmanship into a circus. Tomorrow night, Ethan whispered, they're staging another takedown. That's what the intel says. Ethan's face hardened. Then we'll be ready. I'm done being the busboy. Saturday arrived with the usual weekend buzz. The dining room glowed, but something was different. Ethan had briefed his tight-lipped security team, installed extra hidden cameras, and discreetly coached his staff, without revealing the full story. He needed the Carringtons to expose themselves, on record. At exactly 7:30 p.m., Brent walked through the door with 3 companions. Each held a high-end camera, ring lights tucked into shoulder bags. They laughed loudly, performed for invisible audiences, the perfect imitation of social media influencers on a harmless food tour. Good evening, Brent beamed at Sophie. We're content creators, doing a feature on upscale dining. I'm sure you'll give us your absolute best tonight. Sophie, her expression the very portrait of hospitality, nodded. Of course, sir. Right this way. Ethan, standing by the bread station in a pristine apron, watched as they were led to table 15. A young couple had reluctantly given up their seats after being told the table had been pre-reserved for VIP guests. 10 minutes later, Vanessa made her entrance, late and theatrical. Her white dress shimmered like it had never been worn twice, and she sauntered through the dining room like a queen surveying her court. In her hand, a half-full wineglass, brought from outside, a deliberate violation. Dawning, she cooed as she rejoined the group, eyes glinting with anticipation, and from his station across the room, Ethan smiled. But there was no kindness in it. Only calculation. They wanted a show, he was going to give them one. Vanessa's voice rang out like a siren across the room, loud enough for half the diners to hear. I hope they're treating you better than last night. That dreadful service was absolutely unacceptable. Every word was calculated. Bait cast wide. Laya, who had been reassigned to their section despite every fiber in Ethan's body resisting the idea, approached with the practiced poise of someone walking into a fire she couldn't escape. Menus in hand, her smile was warm, genuine, because she still believed this was about service, about redemption. Yeah, no. Good evening, she said, her tone full of quiet resolve. Welcome back to Maison Lumière. I'm Leia, and I'll be— Oh, it's you again, Vanessa sneered, cutting her off like a slap. Her voice curled with disdain. The girl who couldn't manage a simple wine order? Across the room, one of Brent's companions subtly shifted his camera into place. The faint red glow of recording flickered on. Nearby diners began to glance over. A few lifted phones of their own, sensing drama. The stage was being set. "I apologize if last evening didn't meet your expectations," Leia said, still measured, still holding her ground. "How can I make tonight perfect for you?" Brent leaned back with false grandeur. "Well, for starters, you could try not looking like you just came from a college cafe. This is a fine dining establishment, not a Starbucks." Her smile twitched just slightly, but she didn't waver. "Of course, sir. May I recommend tonight's chef's special? We have a beautifully roasted—" "We don't need recommendations from someone who clearly doesn't understand quality," Vanessa snapped, slicing through the moment with theatrical venom. At the next table, the elderly couple from the night before exchanged glances. The woman's hand twitched toward her napkin like she might rise to intervene, but her husband gently touched her wrist. "Wait. Oyster selection," Leia offered, her voice faltering for the first time, "is particularly—" "Are you even listening to us?" Vanessa's voice pitched louder. "We're telling you your service is incompetent, and all you can do is babble about oysters." From the side, Ethan noticed it, Brent flashing subtle hand signals to his crew. Camera angles shifted, lenses zoomed. This wasn't spontaneous, it was choreography. "I'm sorry," Leia said, her voice now trembling. "I'm really trying to—" Vanessa stood, wine glass in hand, eyes locked with Leia's like a predator sighting its mark. "You're clearly not trying hard enough." And then, without warning, Vanessa hurled the entire glass of red wine across the table. It struck Leia squarely in the chest, exploding in a dark bloom across her white uniform. The wine soaked her shirt, ran down her arms, dripped from her chin. Gasps tore through the restaurant as silence collapsed under a wave of shock. "Oh my God!" Vanessa shrieked, spinning the lie without missing a beat. "She bumped into me! She made me spill it all!" Leia froze, red-streaked, humiliated, speechless. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her hands trembled, her eyes filled. I didn't," she stammered, but her voice cracked and the tears came fast. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The words were instinct training. She had been taught that customer comfort came above all. Even now, standing soaked in Cabernet and shame, she tried to salvage the table. "I can get a new tablecloth. I can comp your meal. Please." "It's too late for sorry," Vanessa screeched, her tone escalating for the cameras. "She should be fired. Immediately. This kind of violence has no place in a civilized space." The crew recorded it all. Leia crying, guests gasping, Vanessa's outrage. It was perfect, viral gold. The kind of footage that destroyed careers, closed restaurants, fulfilled vendettas. But they had miscalculated. They hadn't accounted for Ethan. From across the room, Ethan stood, not as a busboy, not as an observer, but as a man who had finally reached the line he could not let be crossed. He pulled off his apron slowly, deliberately, as if shedding the skin of who he had been pretending to be. He walked across the room, each step calm but heavy with intent. Conversations stopped, forks froze in midair. The dining room, just moments ago a stage of chaos, now fell under the gravity of something new. "Excuse me," Ethan said as he arrived at table 15, his voice clear, even. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." Brent turned, exasperated. "I'm sorry, but we're dealing with a serious issue. Your server attacked my wife." "Exercise," Ethan replied, his tone like smooth steel. "I witnessed the entire interaction, and I believe it's time for some clarity." He turned slowly, addressing the room, his voice rising not with rage but with authority earned over years. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, loud enough for all to hear, "please allow me to introduce myself." He reached behind his back, untied the apron and let it fall to the floor. "My name is Ethan Gray," he said, eyes locking with Brent's lens, "and I am the founder and owner of Maison Lumiere." A collective gasp swelled through the room. Sophie, still near the host stand, dropped her tablet. Leia blinked, frozen in place, wine dripping from her fingertips. Her lips trembled. For the past 2 weeks, Ethan continued, I've been working undercover in my own establishment, preparing for an upcoming Michelin review, observing everything. Quietly, patiently, he turned back to the Carringtons. What I witnessed tonight was not poor service. It was a performance. A calculated attack designed to tarnish the reputation of this restaurant. Brent opened his mouth, but Ethan cut him off with precision. Mr. Brent Carrington, of Carrington Holdings. I know who you are. I know about your failed acquisition of the Meridian Group. I know about your campaign of coordinated sabotage. Color drained from Vanessa's cheeks. Around the room, phones stayed up, but now the audience wasn't just recording a meltdown. They were capturing a reckoning. For the past month, you've staged fake reviews, planted agitators, and destroyed good people's livelihoods to force desperate buyouts. Tonight, you brought a camera crew pretending to be food bloggers. He looked directly into the lens, with the goal of going viral at the expense of my team, my niece, and my life's work. The room was silent, but it wasn't the silence of tension anymore. It was the silence of justice approaching. And Ethan Gray wasn't finished. One of Brent's camera operators began to lower his rig, attempting to hide the evidence, but it was far too late. Every eye in the room had already noticed the professional gear, the directional mics, the strategically placed lighting. The illusion of spontaneity had shattered. This is ridiculous, Vanessa spat, her voice shrill and unsteady. The theatrical confidence drained from her like air from a punctured balloon. We're just customers who brought outside alcohol, Ethan interjected, and threw it at a staff member, then falsely accused her of attacking you. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Truth had its own resonance. Ethan pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and the overhead display, usually used for wine education seminars, flickered to life. A second later, crisp security footage rolled across the screen. Multiple camera angles, Vanessa glass in hand, her calculated toss of wine, her immediate false scream of outrage, Leia stunned, heartbroken, apologizing for something she didn't do. Gasps rose from the diners, now fully immersed in a story very different from the one the Carringtons had planned. The footage was indisputable. The truth played like a short film, one that left no room for interpretation. As you can see, Ethan said, his voice quiet but resolute, the only person attacked tonight was my employee. The elderly couple at table 4 began to clap. Slow, deliberate, powerful. Then more joined in. Within seconds, applause swelled across the dining room like a wave. But it wasn't just for justice. It was for dignity, for truth, for a young woman who had endured humiliation with grace, and for a leader who chose protection over profits. Security, Ethan said simply. 2 suited men appeared from near the entrance, calm, discreet, but unmistakably authoritative. Wait, Brand blurted, desperation replacing arrogance. This is a misunderstanding. Let's discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss, Ethan said, not unkindly but with finality. You attempted to stage a fraudulent incident. That's harassment, trespassing, and criminal defamation. Our legal team will be in touch. As the Carringtons were escorted out, camera crew fumbling, Vanessa fuming, she spun back one last time, venom lacing her voice. You have no idea who you're dealing with. We'll destroy you. But Ethan only smiled. Calm. Certain, actually, he said softly. I think you just did the opposite. Within 30 minutes, the truth swept across the internet like wildfire. What the Carringtons had meant for sabotage became a sensation for the right reasons. Real customers had captured the moment Ethan revealed his identity. Footage of the wine-throwing incident, the live security replay, and Ethan's poised takedown was now everywhere. But the clip that went viral, truly viral, was something else entirely. Ethan, kneeling beside Leia, gently wiping red wine from her face with his own handkerchief. Not as her boss, but as her uncle, as family. How long have you known? Leia whispered, trembling. That you were my niece, Ethan said gently. Always. That you belonged in this industry, tonight confirmed it. The 30-second moment, compassion, justice, and leadership, in its purest form, garnered over 3 million views in the first hour alone. And it didn't stop. Corporate sabotage had backfired with spectacular grace. 3 weeks later, Ethan stood in his office, staring at headlines that still felt surreal. From busboy to hero, the story that changed fine dining. Maison Lumiere exposes corporate fraud, leadership, loyalty, and the moment dignity went viral. A soft knock broke his reverie. Uncle Ethan? Leia stepped in, no longer wearing her server uniform. She now wore the crisp white jacket of a culinary apprentice. She stood straighter, walked differently. Her eyes, still young, now carried purpose. Mason's here for our meeting, she said. Behind her, Mason Langford entered, with a thick folder in hand, his usual polo shirt replaced by a sharp navy suit. His transformation had mirrored the restaurant's, from background player to reform leader. Congratulations, he said, shaking Ethan's hand. Michelin results just came in. Ethan held his breath. The drama, the heartbreak. It had all begun with the pressure of a review. But somehow, that now felt like a footnote. 3 stars, Mason said, beaming. They were especially impressed by what they called extraordinary staff composure under unprecedented pressure, and leadership that prioritizes human dignity over profit. Leia gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. But Mason wasn't finished. The Culinary Institute of America has reviewed the footage. They want to offer Leia a full scholarship to their advanced molecular gastronomy program. Leia's eyes shimmered. Mason, I don't know what to say. That's too much. It's not charity, he replied with a smile. It's an investment. I'm also offering you a position as the face of our new mentorship program. Maison Lumiere's initiative to support young culinary professionals. Your story has sparked something bigger than us. Let's build on it. Ethan watched her face. There it was again. That spark of resolve, the same light that had carried her through humiliation and shame, that refused to dim even under fire. But what about the restaurant? She asked. You still need staff. I don't want to leave you short-handed. The restaurant, Ethan said with a soft laugh, is going to be just fine. That was an understatement. Over 10 million views, thousands of applications, articles in major publications, culinary graduates asking to train under Maison Lumiere's philosophy of leadership through compassion. And more than that, the truth had exposed Carrington Holdings' network of deceit. 17 other restaurants had stepped forward. Lawsuits were already in motion. They've lost almost everything, Mason said. Brent's been removed from several boards. Vanessa's lost all her sponsors. Their house of cards is collapsing. What about the other restaurants? Ethan asked. Thriving, Mason said. And grateful, as if on cue. Ethan's phone buzzed again. More interview requests. Food Network, CNN, industry leaders. But Ethan only looked out the window at the dining room, where it had all happened. You know what I'm proudest of? He said. That we proved something. Doing the right thing isn't just ethical, it's good business. 6 months later, Maison Lumiere hosted its first ever Dignity and Service Awards, a new tradition honoring hospitality workers who rose with grace in moments of adversity. The room was full of laughter, wine, and applause. But as Leia stepped onto the stage, no longer the trembling girl with wine on her face, but a rising star, silence fell. The night I had wine thrown at me, she began, I thought my career was over. What I didn't know was that my uncle was watching, and that his response would change everything. She paused, her voice clear and strong. I learned something that night. Your character isn't defined by how others treat you. It's defined by how you respond, with integrity, with compassion, especially when the world is watching. In the back of the room, Ethan stood quietly, Watching the woman Leia had become, the busboy apron he'd once worn was now framed in his office. A reminder. A symbol that sometimes the greatest leadership is silent. Sometimes dignity is the most powerful defense. Sometimes justice is best served with exceptional service.